Well, the first part of the question is that we have a strategy on the funding of the new New York Bridge. It has been evolving. When we started down that road several years ago, we didn't anticipate that we would have a TIFIA loan from New York, from USDOT for $1.6 billion towards that project. We saw the 1.285 billion last year. About 750 million of that is going towards the Tappan Zee, and we are yet determining what part of the 700 that's proposed here that would come towards the TZ. So we do have this framework that we're looking at. I think the other thing that's important is that the governor has named a toll task force, and that task force is focusing only on the tolls at the new New York Bridge. It was named back in November, and they will be working on what we will be looking at moving forward. So it's about the what the tolls will look like once we get through this period, and what other things. For example, do we have commuter discounts? Do we have resident discounts? Do we continue? We have a green card discount. So those kinds of things and issues is really what that task force is going to be charged with.
So you cannot confirm that there would not be a system-wide increase, that that's a possibility in the future?
We will have to see where we are at the end of this period. We are looking at a very aggressive capital program upstate. It's $1.5 billion over the next 5 years. And so, there's no plan to increase tolls at the Thruway in 2016, and hopefully with this executive budget, we'll go through 2020, and we'll be working with our constituencies on what our next steps are.
Thank you. When does the Thruway Authority anticipate you will be able to release a financial plan for the new Tappan Zee Bridge project? So have some details on it, but we don't have a financial plan. Just reference it a little bit. But, when do you think we'll have more details moving forward?
I think moving through the budget process, again, we will look at what portion of the $700 million we will be allocating. And then we need to look at what other new potential innovative financial mechanisms. As I stated, there's a lot of things that we've incorporated that at the beginning of this journey were not even possibilities. It was all going to be tolls at the new New York Bridge. So I think there's been fluidity to be able to be responsive to the financial markets and whatever new tools we have in the toolbox to be able to keep those toll rates as low as possible.
And I think you, especially hailing from Western New York, know that increased tolls is a major drag on the Thruway, major drag on our economy and the traveling public. And oftentimes, as you also know, that big trucks and so on may try to bypass the Thruway and go on our local roads and tear those up. So it's a major issue for people, and it's an affordability issue also. I was hoping that you could comment on the operational savings and financial improvements that the Thruway has undertaken in the last couple of years. If you could give us some more information on those, please.
Sure. First, I'd really like to thank our executive director up till last Friday. Bob Megna has been a real godsend to the Thruway as far as looking at it from a financial standpoint and all the places that we really could look to come up with some changes. But I think, one of the things, being in operations and maintenance for the last year, I actually started December 28th in operations and maintenance of 14, 3 days before we had our first big snow event.
Lucky
when
you.
I was there. I'm a Buffalonian, I can handle it. Anyway, I think we looked at a lot of things from a more global perspective, but we're now drilling down. One of the things that I like to tell folks is this isn't your grandfather's Thruway, it's your daughter's Thruway. There's a lot of new means and methods for how we organize, how we regroup, how we use our resources more wisely across the system. And so we're looking at that, looking from the ground up at the core issues from the bottom up. So we did this kind of top-down review of all the things we can change, and now we're trying to realign our resources into core businesses and how we deliver those businesses. So Moving forward, we'll be working with our board on various different initiatives to be able to streamline back office operations, for example, and put the money where we need it as far as maintaining and operating the roadway system and the bridge system.
Thank you. Is it your assessment that the authority's financial condition is stronger today than it has been? That's number one. And what is your opinion of the bond rating agencies, or what is the opinion of the bond rating agencies regarding the Thruway Authority?
Well, I can speak to the first question. I think we're in much more stable financial footing than we were shortly. I mean, we have a budget that is maintaining less than 1% growth. Our revenue last year, we did much better than we anticipated, even after adjusting it. As far as the bond ratings, I can either get back to you with that, or I can ask Matt, who's our Chief Financial Officer, to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. There's been discussion of parity. I'm sure you heard it earlier as you sat through the testimony of Commissioner Driscoll in the highway and bridge funding program. And so now there's $2 billion, right, with the Thruway that is being counted toward that parity. In your recollection, has that ever happened before? Because it's our understanding that it hasn't been counted toward parity in the past.
I can't speak to the parity issue. It's not something that I've looked at, nor do I know the history at the Thruway. But I do know that $700 million is really integral to us being able to deliver that capital program and keep our tolls flat, which is really what we want to be able to do to help continue the momentum that Upstate is seeing on the upswing.
Well, the new Tappan Zee Bridge, as has been promised, include a bus service being put in place?
The new New York Bridge has allowances for both the potential for rail, for commuter rail and bus rapid transit. Our understanding, our recommendation is that bus rapid transit be available on the bridge when the bridge opens in 2018. I believe BRT is fully funded for that phase to be able to do that, which is $91 million, and that is in this budget, I believe, in DOT.
Thank you. As you also pointed out in your testimony, there is language in the executive proposal that would move funding for the Canal Corporation from DOT over to the New York State Power Authority. And so I was wondering about that. That's been in place since 1992. What are the benefits of making that move?
I think, first of all, it's revenue neutral, and it's, again, realigning under our core businesses. I think the Canal Corporation really does have a natural nexus with the Power Authority. They do operate hydroelectric facilities along the Canal Corporation. Both organizations, their core business is water resources. It is hydroelectric power, and it's tourism, because the Power Authority has its visitor center. So that's part of their focus. Once upon a time, the canal was about commercial vehicles. Now it's more about recreational vehicles and tourism. And again, I think there's great opportunity with the governor's goals of going to 50% from green power. There's great opportunity that the Canal Authority, as a function of what they do, can take advantage of to increase the amount of hydroelectric power along the canal system, as well as increasing tourism.
Thank you. I have a couple of follow-up questions. Now, under the governor's proposal, he's recommending that the Thruway reassume the cost of State Police Troop T.
Correct.
And also, he recommends the elimination of current cost waivers by the state, and that would increase the Thruway's operating budget by about $85 million, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct. And
so you believe that the Power Authority would be able to absorb or pay for those increased costs?
So I think it's revenue neutral. I think they will, and you can talk to the Power Authority specifically, but that will come from the budget to the Power Authority. and then we will take back Troop T, which again is very core to our business. And having have events just last week and this week and working with them across the state, we are working very closely with Troop T on a very regular basis. So again, I think that realigns our core businesses very well.
Thank you. And I do have one final question, and it's related to the Canal Corporation. As you know very well, again, Western New Yorker, there are several historical canal bridges that are in need of repair, and most of them would be in Senator Ord's district. So DOT has been maintaining those bridges in the past, and how would that be paid for in the future, and would the Power Authority be the source of funding to make sure that those historic bridges are maintained, and also they're important from an economic and tourism sense also?
Last year, we actually did sign an agreement with DOT relative to the DOT being responsible for the capital investments on those bridges, and that the Thruway was responsible for the operation and the maintenance. And so it's envisioned with the transition with Canal Corporation that contract would just be novated. And so our responsibilities would go to Power Authority, and the DOT would remain with the responsibilities they have in the memorandum and the agreement we have now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Commissioner, the Mass Transit Force made recommendations for the bus rapid transit across the Tappan Zee Bridge replacement. Is there a funding in the budget proposal for this purpose?
My understanding there is. It is not in the Thruway's budget proposal. We have a small amount allocated towards that project, but it is in the budget proposal.
And so you don't know if it's is it phase one fully funded?
Phase one is fully funded. It's my understanding that it's fully funded.
And when will the service in the new BRT system begin?
We are recommending that they begin when we open the bridge in 2018.
Give me that date again.
2018.
2018, okay. The 15-16 enacted budget included Article 7 legislation that authorized shared service agreements between the Thruway Authority and DOT in emergency situation. Has that shared service authorization been utilized?
Yes, it has. And it's probably being utilized as I speak right now with the potential nor'easter coming to New York. We are regularly sharing resources with the two lake effect storms we've had in the past 2 weeks. We've actually been able to utilize some of the new equipment that DOT had in big snow blowers to be able to pre-position them in areas where we had very heavy lake effect snow bands in the 4 to 5 inches an hour, and we're able to keep the road open. So we've been using them. We've been working together on our plans and how we coordinate better. They've been kicking the tires on some of our plans. We've been helping them with some of theirs. And so there's regular meetings, there's regular sharing of information, and actually people and equipment.
The executive also has additional Article 7 legislation that would create 2 new tax credits which would reimburse half the cost of tolls paid by the frequent travelers of the Thruway and all of the cost of tolls paid by the farm vehicle. Does the Thruway anticipate traffic growth related to these tax credits?
We are actually having one of our traffic consultants that do our revenue work for us look at that very issue. We believe that it probably will drive more traffic to the Thruway, and we also believe it'll drive more traffic to Easy Pass, which makes it more cost-effective for us to be able to handle that. So I do believe that it is going to drive traffic some. We still do not have the results from the traffic modeling based on this type of activity in other parts of the country.
And the program would only work, you have to have Easy Pass to take it.
Correct.
Yes, that will raise it. Questions? Any other questions?
Yeah,
Senator?
yes. Senator Joseph Griffo.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Director Lehman, thank you for being here today. The Canal Corporation, when it was under the thruway, what was the subsidy, the complete subsidy, to have that housed under the thruway?
I think going back again to what we're talking about, we were talking about $85 million was the cost, both from an operations and maintenance standpoint of the canal, as well as the capital that was spent on an annual basis. So that's about what we were spending.
So it was costing you $85 million to have the responsibility of the Canal Corp, correct?
Correct.
And then the state was assuming $85 million in cost to state police and other support services.
State police and the operating subsidy to the thruway, correct.
So that's where you're seeing that offset right now.
Correct.
So then the new cost of that $85 million will basically be borne by the Power Authority?
It's our understanding that what this will do is it will basically just be a budgetary transfer of moving.
But how, if those costs were being actually incurred, how could they not incur significant costs themselves, having now the responsibility and authority over the Canal Corporation and everything, maintenance and other responsibilities that go along with that?
Well, I believe they will be getting, it's a revenue neutral transaction three ways, so I believe the budget will support Power Authority for that amount.
So based on this, the idea of long-term stability, using the one-time surplus now bank settlement, you're projecting that by 2020 the rates can stay the same. Was there ever any consideration given to, and you're doing this in tier approaches apparently, was there any thought given to just a across-the-board reduction or freeze rather than having all these tiers with tax credits and things of that nature?
I think we're always looking at the financial the whole financial planning of what we do with the thruway, and we have the thruway was built in the 1950s. It's more than 60 years old. It sees 250 million vehicles a year and 8 billion miles traveled on it. It is getting old. It is being much more capital intensive as far as being able to maintain it at a state of good repair. And it is the backbone, so we need to be able to maintain it. So I think we're always looking at ways of cost cutting, but we do have a 570-mile long asset that needs a lot of tender loving care. And
when you compare that to other states across the country, have you done those type of analysis, other states that operate similar highways, and what their tolls are compared to ours?
Yes, we have done that, and even in the peer states in the region, our tolls are average, I believe, 4.7 cents a mile, and that's much lower than all our peers. I mean, significantly lower. In a lot of cases, a half or a third of what our peer states are. So we're doing everything we can to keep the toll rates low and to maintain the infrastructure.
And could you just, two quick questions. Who recommended this removal of the Canal Corp from the thruway to the, was that something you recommended, Thruway suggested that, or did that come from, can you share the thinking behind how this change was made?
I think there's been a lot of discussion over the years on that, and I wasn't privy to a lot of those conversations. I'm pretty new to the seat. It's a few days old. But I think there's been a lot of discussion over the years about where it would make the most sense from a core business standpoint. And I do know that our director, Brian Stratton, is very supportive of this because he sees the synergy of the move.
Now, but beyond the upkeep, the capital costs, beyond upkeep, you may be looking at new initiatives. Is there any consideration being given to adding additional exits using Easy Pass only as a possibility?
I think that is in our longer-term plan. I believe the lessons we learned from the all-electronic tolling at the new New York Bridge at the Tappan Zee really is going to help us formulate better plans. There's a lot of improvements. I know in the past there's been studies done, and it was multi-billions to be able to do that, simply because the way the geometry of the road works, to be able, you have to go slow where the toll plazas are because they're narrow and you have curves, both horizontal and vertical. So I think it's an expensive undertaking, and we need to make sure that it is the best. We get our best return on investment before we do that. So we have this next 5-year capital plan to really understand the issues and how much cost savings we have and how effective and efficient the system is, and then work on the plan on how we do this in a more broad-based system. All electronic tolling is tolling of the future. There's a lot of states that have really embraced it. We have one of the oldest, backbones and interstate systems in the country, and so that modernization, we want to take it slow and careful so we do get a good return on investment.
Hundreds of millions of dollars being given to you this year just to hold the line basically for 4 years, when you know and recognize how important this is economically as well as a transportation network. I would hope that we're looking now under your direction and with your staff at a much longer term approach for stability than just to say that hundreds of millions of dollars which could be invested in capital and free up other money for you. I can hear Daniel Patrick Moynihan, his words ringing in our ears, but we really need to provide much more long-term stability cost-wise than just 4 years after spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and I hope under your leadership that will happen. Thank you.
I totally concur. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next.
Thank you.
Any Assembly members? Then we also have Senator Marty DeLon.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Chairperson. My question is with regard to the tax credit for Easy Pass riders you mentioned in your testimony. I would like you to elaborate a little more as to how this tax credit will work. Where is the money coming from to pay for it? And what effect will this have on your system? And then also presuming that this tax credit modifies drivers' behavior and there is more use of the system, what effect will that have on maintenance of your system?
Okay. I think as far as details on the tax proposal, I think that the budget is looking through the Department of Taxation, that they will have money in the budget to be able to handle that. As we're looking at it, if we look at the breakdown, passenger vehicles paying $50 or more in annual tolls, when we look at that, that'll impact about 900,000 drivers, and there'll be an annual savings to those drivers of about $97. I think if you look at businesses and commercial vehicles, there's more than 26,000 businesses that will benefit under that, and they'll see about just under $700 of average savings. And then the commercial trucks, based on looking at all our records, there's just under 1,000 commercial trucking companies that we feel will see a benefit, and that benefit will average out at about $1,800 per. So it's providing to refocus on getting people back on the main arterial, the main backbone. It's also going to drive Easy Pass usage, and for our perspective, we have much higher percentages of Easy Pass usage in the city, and close to New York City. It's much lower as we get more into upstate New York. It's more effective for us and more cost effective to be able to run the system with the Easy Pass, and so we're hoping that that will help on the operational side. From a maintenance side, as I told you, we have a lot of miles traveled on the system. I don't think you're going to see a great bump in traffic. I do see that we are going to have some bump in traffic, and hopefully here in the next few months we'll have more data of what that looks like. And while we have our capital program, our full 5-year program, detailed down to the individual projects, is on our webpage right now. We do look at that quarterly to see what changes we have to make, and on an annual basis what changes we have to make based on issues that we're seeing. So over the past 2 winters, where we've had a tough spring, spring comes after a deep thaw, and we have issues with the roadway, we've reprogrammed some things basically because we had to. So I think we'll be looking at all that very carefully as we are looking at our 2017 element of our capital program, to make sure that in places that we're seeing more wear and tear that we can address it.
And this is a tax credit that's being proposed for 3 years. What happens after that?
I don't know what we're going to do beyond that, and I think we're going to be looking at our models to see what makes the most sense as the next proposal.
Okay. I just see that in New York City, we're talking about congestion pricing and move New York, and it just seems strange that you're using taxpayer dollars to invite more congestion on your system. So I was concerned about that. How do you react to that?
I think there's some concerns, but I think realistically, we still offer a really good roadway network for a lot of that, and we still, while we do have some areas where we have capacity issues, by and large, they're a lot, they're not as challenging as some of the other roadways, and so we really do want to drive traffic. I think moving forward, we should be looking at things like congestion pricing, which we do at the Tappan Zee Bridge, and do that more extensively across the system so that we can kind of flatten out the peaks and valleys on the roadway. So I think as we're looking towards the future, we'll be looking towards those kinds of items.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
That's it.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Senator Kruger.
Sorry. Thank
Not
you.
forget about Senator Kruger.
I always like to try to be the last. So I appreciated very much the answer to the question earlier, which was actually news to me, that our toll costs per mile are less than any other states, because I think sometimes in the rhetorical discussions that take place, there's some perception that it's just the opposite. So that was actually very helpful. Following through on the concerns about the state now investing from general fund in the Thruway Authority, although we are, arguably using the settlement money, the governor is proposing a 4-year freeze on toll increases, but is there anywhere in the budget that he's making a multi-year commitment of state revenue continuing to go into the Thruway Authority beyond just this 1 year?
No, I think the intent is that based on what we need from a cash flow and a capital to be able to deliver that 5-year program, that infusion from settlement funds this year will work through those years so that it does cover us till 2020.
So it's your projection that based on the money coming in this year as the governor proposed it, for the following 3 years after that, the Thruway Authority will not need infusion of non-thruway money to continue on your commitment not to need a toll increase, even though we're continuing the new tax credit, which will actually lower your revenue?
The tax credit will not lower the revenue. The revenue will still be coming to the Thruway. And so, again, we feel that based on all the projections, that is the intent. It's our intent that will hold us through till 2020, and now it gives us the opportunity to look to the future to see what we do beyond 2020.
And you were right, the tax credit doesn't come from your budget, it comes from general fund. So what's the estimated cost to the state of these 2 new tax credits?
How much? $340 million?
Per year?
Over 3 years.
Over 3 years.
Correct.
Thank you. Jumping to the Canal Authority being moved to the Power Authority, and your discussion of the fact that the Canal Authority actually does generate electricity through, just double checking the number, quite a few small plants on the authority. Do you believe that if the canal is moved to the Power Authority, it opens up new opportunities for the state of New York to increase the amount of hydroelectric power produced on the Canal Authority?
Absolutely. I'm a real proponent of green energy. My husband and I built a passive solar house 35 years ago, so I live this. And I'm a very big proponent of green energy. The technology in the last decade has really improved to be able to do low-head hydropower. Once upon a time, you needed to have big dams like you have in Niagara or like you have on the St. Lawrence to be able to really be effectively producing electricity. Technology has come forward to the point that you can use smaller, shorter dams. And so I believe they have great opportunity to be able to take advantage of that and provide a lot more. I mean, right now, they generate about $7 million worth of power from what they do on the canal, and I think there's great opportunity to be able to do a lot more than that.
I agree with you that it would be a very good thing. Every opportunity we have for new green energy in the state is a win for us. We asked the Department of Transportation Commissioner what the actual cost for the the new bridge, in Westchester. I don't know that there's an official name.
The new New York Bridge.
The new New York Bridge. Thank you. I keep forgetting that terminology. So he said that that's not his budget, so he didn't know. Do you have an estimated full cost for the build of the new New York Bridge?
Yes, I do. It is $3.98 billion. It is what it is since we've accepted the bid for the project, and we are on target for opening it in 2018 and staying within that budget.
And is there an estimate of the debt costs and what that will be for the state over time from this project?
At this point, we have the TIFIA loan, which is a federal loan, low-interest, long-term loan. We have what we received in the budget allocation last year, which was about $750. We will have some amount from this year's $700. That is yet to be determined on how much will go off for the rest of the system. And then the remainder, we're still looking for innovative financing. We always have the ability to go back to how the Thruway does and do our revenue bonds. But we want to be able to keep, and those are paid with future tolls, so we want to keep those down, so every innovative opportunity we have. Those, if we do have the debt, it will come on to the Thruway Authority in our bonding program.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Thanks, Executive Director.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Just going to go sit in the audience and then we'll see.